What's up, everybody? So I'm back today with another video on philosophy study skills. This is going to be part 2 in the series. If you haven't, go check out part 1 before. Leave a comment if you like it. Also, don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe on this video. So this one's going to be a little bit longer, and that's because I'm tackling a very difficult topic, and that's going to be research. This is going to constitute the absolute core of your philosophical endeavor. So what I'm going to do today is just go over, I typed a little thing out and I'm going to leave that in the description below, and I'm going to go over what I typed out, and then I'm going to use an example from my past to really illustrate the concepts that I'm articulating here. So research, for general background, for somebody who doesn't know so much, is going to be looking at sources, texts, and using those to compose your own work. So you're going to be reading, say, Hume or Meister Eckhart and synthesizing some of those things, maybe taking an idea from Eckhart, comparing it to Proclus or somebody, maybe taking an idea from Hume, comparing it to somebody in the ancient tradition, whatever. There are so many different situations we're going to be needing to do research, but this is going to be the core. So for you undergrads out there, research is going to be composed mainly of reading the text assigned in class, maybe looking at some secondaries, maybe looking at your professor's commentaries and your notes from class, and then synthesizing that into your own coherent view. So let's talk about how to actually do research in a systematic manner, because this is very difficult. Like I said, link below is going to be my Google Doc to my guide to this, so that you guys have a reference you can print out or something. So the first skill you're going to need to learn how to do when researching is you're going to have to be comfortable contacting people. This is huge, absolutely crucial. Utilize your professors. So you're going to want to go to your professors and talk to them first and foremost about the text. Go into office hours, contact them. Also, they are going to know people and scholars in the area that you're looking at. So let's take an example here. If you're discussing Hume and you need help on Hume's view of causation, for instance, go to your professor. He or she may know a Hume scholar, and go with questions and ask your professor, say, hey, I need help on this. If you can't answer this, can you email some scholars you know? That's going to be big. I've actually done this before in regards to Hume's view of causation and in regards to conceptions and models of God. So for instance, I emailed a faculty at another university with whom I had never met, and thankfully he responded to me with some answers to my questions. That's going to be huge, going to be great for helping you research, and it's going to really show initiative on your side when it comes time to exams and papers. And who knows, you may end up making a great connection or starting a lifelong friendship. So that's going to be the first tip, contacting people. Second tip is going to be planning ahead. Absolutely crucial. So I try to start papers at least 1 month ahead of time in case of a disaster. And this is just big. I can't stress this enough. You got to get over the procrastination. It is a horrible habit, yet it has to go, especially in philosophy. You need at least 1 month to prepare an undergraduate paper, I think, and you need at least, I want to say three plus months to prepare a solid writing sample or academic journal article. So really plan ahead, and aim to get a rough draft to your teacher in person or over email at least a week before the due date, and ask for comments. This is going to show initiative again. It's going to really help you get some crucial feedback. But aim to have a rough draft done and submitted to your teacher for some comments at the very minimum a week before the due date, so you can go back and revise. And again, with planning ahead, I want to have all my preparatory readings done at least 2 weeks out before the due date. So that's going to give me at least 1 week to get a rough draft synthesized, and it's going to give me at least 2 weeks to have my final paper written. So aim, if you're starting a paper a month early, aim to have your readings done within 2 weeks, your notes taken within 2 weeks. Aim to start writing about then and have a rough draft due at least a week before. I would go even further, but this is the bare minimum time, I would say, to be really successful. So the third tip is to budget time. This is absolutely crucial. I'm guilty of not doing it, but I seriously Cannot recommend this enough. The single best way to write a paper is to work on it every day. You're constantly engaging with the text, engaging with the work. You're not forgetting anything. You're not getting sloppy. So even if you can sit down for 20 minutes and work on it, that is better than nothing. But every day, engage with that piece of writing. You might have some new insights, and you might be able to jot those down. The downside of this is that if you're writing for, say, 20 to 40 minutes a day, you can kind of lose your train of thought. But again, once you start writing, you just get rolling. And oftentimes I've wanted to sit down for 20 minutes and I've ended up writing for an hour or two. So that's going to be another crucial thing, is to budget time. Now, the fourth tip is with regards to reading and finding material. So this is actually going to be what I think is the hardest part of researching. So obviously your primary texts are going to be your main source, but they're not your only source, and that's going to be crucial here. You, again, can understand the primary text, but it takes some work. Like I mentioned in my previous video, you're going to want to go to your professor's interpretation, your class notes, and also your commentaries that you may come across. And again, after these tips, I'm going to give my own example of a research project I did lately. So utilize these secondary sources to fill in the gaps and look at the contemporary debate surrounding the issue. So for instance, with Hume, you're going to want to read his accounts of causation. You're going to want to read our secondary sources from somebody like Helen Beebe, and look at her account of Hume's causation. And then you're going to want to look at the contemporary debate. And all of this stuff is going to be hard to come across. So you're going to want to look at footnotes especially, and you're going to want to look at sites like academia.edu, Phil Papers, and even people's blogs. So for instance, when writing about Thomas Aquinas, I'm going to look at Thomas Aquinas' own work. I'm going to look at some neo-Thomists from, say, the 17th century. I'm going to look at some contemporary Thomists, and then I'm going to browse the internet and look at papers. I'm going to look at blog postings, and I'm going to kind of gather all of that up. This is going to come down to knowing how to search efficiently in Google. So you're going to want to search for key terms. You're going to want to go wide, look at footnotes. You're going to want to go to these blogs, look at the contemporary debate, look at how the scholars are interacting with one another. You can even use social media to a certain extent. Go to Twitter and type in, say, for instance, Hume on causation. Are there any scholars on Twitter who've posted YouTube videos? Are there any scholars or lay people, non-philosophers, who are debating about it? What are they saying? Is that accurate? Maybe that would give you something to write about in your paper. For instance, the debate over Hume's causation on Twitter, something like that. You never know. So use all this cast a wide net when you're looking for sources. It's better to have too many than too few. So those are my 4 tips here. Now let's take a look at one of my own projects and see how I applied those tips. So I was actually hired, you could say, to do a research project for a teacher. I was she wanted me to look at Hume on miracles, do a ton of stuff, and it would be great for my CV. So what did I do? Well, first of all, what I did was I looked at the original text and I read through it and I kind of summarized Hume's own view. And then I looked at contemporary responses to Hume, so people writing around the same time as him and what they said. And then after that, I looked at the history of the thought. So there wasn't a lot going on in the 1800s over Hume's view of miracles, but there was a ton of stuff going on in the 20th century, the 1900s. So I looked at those responses. Then I finally looked at contemporary, to me, responses right here in the 21st century. And these are going to be book responses, book-length responses that I looked at. I then went and looked at philosophy articles. So I went to Phil Papers, I went to academia.edu, and I looked at article responses. And so I had a massive list of books and articles, and I just skimmed through as much as I could, wrote out a paragraph or two on what the summary, what the author's main point was. And this was going to compose my stock of texts. And within those, it was still very jumbled up. So I had pros and I had cons. So I people supporting Hume, people disagreeing with Hume. So after that, what I did was I went to blog postings. So I simply I went to blogs, philosophy blogs that I knew, and I typed in Hume miracles, and I searched up responses, and I was able to gather a lot of information on that. So that allowed me to then check footnotes. So then what I did is I went into all those texts, whether it be blogs, papers, or books, and I checked the footnotes, and that led me to even more. So finally, I had this massive corpus of work. Then what I did is I separated it out piece by piece. And I said, okay, well, here are views for Hume. Here are views against Hume. And then what I did is I had all of my summaries, and I was able to kind of piece them all together in this document for my professor. So that was going to be a great example of the research. And you can see that I used most of these skills. I didn't end up writing a paper, it was just for the professor, but I did have to budget my time, so I had to work on this a little bit each day. I did have to plan ahead because I knew she wanted it by X date, and so I had to plan ahead to get it done by then. And then I had to contact people, so I actually talked to some other people and said, okay, well, where are you getting this information from? Like, do you have any other good sources for me that I can look at? Are you familiar with any of this? And then I had to read and find a crap ton of material. So those are going to be the 4 basic skills I used for researching, and you can see that it really paid off here. Now, I think this is a good place to kind of recap and then end the video. So keep in mind, I first said that you should contact people. That was the first tip. So contacting people, reaching out to professors who may know scholars in the area, even sending emails yourself to people in your specific area. And then after that, I want you to plan your time very well. Try to have a rough draft of your project handed in for comments or gone over a week before the final draft due date. And then have your primary readings done at least 2 weeks before, so you can really start to hone in on that rough and final draft. And then the third tip was to budget your time. So try to take time each day to work on the project. Try not to slack on it. Try not to put it off for a week or two because you might forget. And then the most important tip was to find material. And this comes with practice, but I gave my example of looking at books, and that's going to range from contemporary responses. So if you're writing about Immanuel Kant, maybe you're looking at Fichte and Schelling, how they responded, or even some lesser known people within that time frame. Then you're going to look at the historical development of the thought, and this is all going to be for finding material. So the contemporaries from that writer, the historical development, and then contemporaries today writing about those thinkers. And so in my example, it was Hume on miracles. So I looked at Hume's own text, I looked at contemporary responses to Hume, I looked at the history of the debate, and then I looked at contemporaries of me today. And I looked at books, papers, and blog posts. And I even looked on social media and YouTube for a bit to see if there were any helpful lectures or helpful commentaries or anything, just to get a vast, vast look at the corpus of what I was researching. This helped me a ton, and it's a great place for you to start your own research. So with all that in mind, I think those tips are going to help you to develop your research skills, and if you put those into practice every time you do a project, I guarantee that you will be successful. Next time, we're going to look at another study skill. So if you have any comments, leave them below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks.